What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Michael Experience Podcast. I am your orator and originator, Michael, and these are my thoughts, my life, my way. All right, so I want to give a huge shout out to my Apple Podcast Platinum subscription users. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast in that way. If you have not, and you are on Apple Podcasts and you want to support the podcast in another way, you can go ahead and subscribe. You can do the monthly subscription for $6.99 or $59.99 for the yearly. And I thank you all so much for just being a part of this journey. So, as we are talking about this journey, we are still in the throes of our life lessons and what I consider hard life lessons at that. So, the one that we'll be talking about today is understanding that not everybody wants what you want. And so that can go in a number of ways. My thought process on this is that I've been through a lot in this lifetime with friends, with coworkers, with just people, right? In every type of relationship that you can have with someone. And I've always, for whatever reason, held that we all wanted the same level of success and we all wanted the same type of success. And I think it's very important that we begin to dissect and disassemble that notion because although there are people that are standing beside us, standing around us and, in the same sphere, not everybody wants the same thing and not everybody is in agreement on how to get there. And so I think about in my particular situation, I had friends, multiple friends that I just was like, yeah, we want to be executives. We want to be running the show. We want to be at the top of things. And then I realized that they just didn't want that. They just wanted to make enough money, not to struggle. And they were okay with just not doing all the extra stuff. And I just remember when I realized it, how deflated I felt. And in some ways, if I'm being honest, I felt like maybe I was lied to a little bit because I'm like, how did we keep doing this thing together? We've been on this journey together, but for some reason you don't want to do it anymore, or your energy just isn't the same. And then I had to look inward. I believe a lot of times we want so badly for people to win that are around us. And those of us who like to share in the glory and like to share in the success, we're just like, yes, we want our friends, we want our family around. And so everything that we're doing while we are just like powering through life, powering through career, powering through success, whatever that looks like, we're like dragging people along with us. And we're like, come on, come on, come on. And they're just kind of like, I'm gonna go along to get along, but when this gets to be too much for me, I'm gonna get off. And for whatever reason, we've built up this codependence on them, right? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying we get used to the people around us. We get used to having the conversations with our best friend, which our best friend could be a cousin, a brother, or just a friend or sister, or somebody that we met along the journey. And so we just really get used to confiding and trusting in that person. And then at the moment that we realize, oh my God, they don't want to go down this pathway or they don't want the same thing that I want, we can tend to feel like the rug has been pulled out from up under us. But it is very important that we understand that not everybody wants what we want, and not everybody is in agreement on how to get there if our paths are similar. So I will say this, right, as a parent, to bring some context to this conversation. I've always wanted my daughter to go to college and to have the experience that I didn't get to have in college, which is for me, I didn't get to just have a worry free, anxiety free tenure in college. I did not. I had to work a couple of jobs. And so I had to go back and forth between my school schedule and my work schedule. And sometimes that meant I had to change jobs because the job that I was at the time didn't want to accommodate my schedule, but I had to do all of these things and manage my grades and bills, and I had my own apartment. And so I wanted my daughter to have kind of the worry free, stress free, anxiety free college experience. And so her and I had that conversation from her early teenage years. Like I'm telling you, probably like 12, 13. We were literally talking about it, and then she got older, she started going to high school, and I started noticing that her career plans changed. And she went through a period where I could tell she was just telling me what I wanted to hear because she knew I had put a lot of like emphasis and stock and value into her, going to college. And I had to realize that at some point, I had to realize that that just isn't what she wanted to do. And that was gut wrenching to me because I was like, oh my God, like, how do you not want to go to college? I have been working, I have been doing these things because I want you to go and have the experience. I don't want you to have to pay your phone bill in college because I had to pay my phone bill. I don't want you to have to necessarily worry about rent and a job and all of those things. Like, of course, my daughter worked and, I always talked about having a job. And so she was going to have a job, but I didn't want her to feel like if she lost her job or if she couldn't work at her job because of her school schedule and studying and all of that, that she would have to worry about not having a place to stay. And so all of these things were me. I know you're probably like, well, Mike, this was all on you. And you are absolutely right. This was all on me. These were the things that were plaguing my mind. And this is the experience I wanted to give her. But I had to realize, like, that isn't the experience she wanted. And yeah, I asked her if she wanted to go to college, and of course she told me yes. I think at a very formative age, we all are like, number one, if we love our parents, not everybody loves their parents or they love their parents a little bit differently. But when you have that level of love for your parents where you want them to be happy with you and you want them to be accepting of your choices and you do want to make them happy ultimately, like, right, you're going to say yes because of course they're saying like, get an education, do all these things. And so I at some point had to realize like, oh my god, my daughter does not want to go to college. And what am I going to do now that I've had all of these ideas and feelings about it for years? Like, how do I then show up and support her in whatever it is that she wants to do? And so I had to come to this conclusion that I just had to surrender that there's a greater plan for what she has going on. And it doesn't mean that I'm not there to support it. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't be a resource. It just means that it looks a little bit differently. And so while I was sitting here planning all of these things, I was just like, okay, I don't know. I was like, okay, I was planning all these things. So maybe I'll just let her tell me what it is that she needs and what it is that she wants. But there's so much in us, I believe, that still, like I do with her sometimes, I still am just like, God, like, is she gonna decide to go to college? And then, that's gonna put us back on the path. And maybe she will. Who knows? But the one thing that I took away from it is that I couldn't be upset with her for choosing her own path. And I had to be okay with whatever it is that she decides to do. And I think this is an important lesson for a lot of us out there that have friends or we have children and we have wanted and wanted and wanted and we've been encouraged and we have put like all of our hearts and soul into making sure that they know we're there for them and then they change the program on us. I think that's a very good lesson for us to learn is that we have to just love them the way that we can love them wherever they are. And sometimes that does mean that you're not going to have as big of an influence, of course. That also sometimes means that the time that you spend with somebody is going to be lessened because you are going separate ways. And that is not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing when people can come together and for whatever reason, they can come together, have those cherishable moments, have this person or people in their lives that is able to contribute in some meaningful way, and then go out into the world and figure it out on their own. Now, maybe they'll come back into an alignment. I don't know. Possibly, maybe, maybe not. But what is for sure is that in the time that you shared with them, you wanted at the core the best for them. And sometimes the best for people sometimes is not for us to be with them because we can hinder people from being successful in their own way. Yeah. Because what I know now is that sometimes people will whether it's your children, your best friends, who have family members, if they've looked up to you for a long time, they will feel like they're letting you down by going and doing their own thing. And so that means not having to, in order to negate that or get around that, they are not wanting to tell you the truth about things. And they're going to go along with, less than 50% effort and, not feel wholeheartedly about what they're doing with you. And that's because they're not living in their own authenticity. And I talk about that ad nauseum, but we all have to be free to be exactly who we're meant to be. Otherwise, why even do it? And why even exist in a space? And when you are muffled and stifled in that way, your creativity is as well. And so it can keep people, like I said, from going and being successful in their own way. And so we do have to let people go, and we do have to just encourage them on their journey. Now, what I can say is that for us that want people right around us to win, like we got to say like what is winning, right? I think that's the other challenge in it is what is winning, right? Because we all have an idea of what success looks like. And some people it's money, some of it is a title, some of it is working at this particular place with these particular people. So, just as we have to define what success is for ourselves, right? But we also have to figure out what is winning. What does it mean to win? Is winning when you have accumulated all the money, you continue to accumulate all the money? Is it getting every position that you ever set out to get? Or is it making enough money and then turning around and helping other people make a bunch of money? Is it where you are inviting people constantly into your space with hopes that you are going to empower, motivate, and inspire somebody else at some point to fill this space, right? So, switching from the accumulating personality to the servicing and to giving personality, could that be winning for you? For me, it is very important that I take whatever it is that I have, skills, abilities, you know, monetarily, if I can make that a reality, I want to be able to take what I have and then to be able to, expand and dispense it amongst the people who are around me so that we are all, equal in some way and we all feel valuable in some way, right? And that is respective to everybody's individual desires, needs, wants, and contributions to our circle. I do believe that if you are building something bigger, something more enterprise bound, corporation bound, something where you have multiple entities in your umbrella, if the people around you want to be around you, you guys will figure out a way to remain in synergy and to remain in alignment and where they can bring themselves fully to something that you are participating in. And I think that is the beauty in it. So maybe at this particular moment in my life, I don't have a need for somebody who's a graphic designer or somebody who's a creative director because I'm just not there yet. But as my enterprise grows, I would definitely continue to think about those people that have gone on their journey and like, hey, I wonder if my friend Steven is really, gotten into this graphic thing. And I wonder if he's a whiz with AI if we haven't been in contact with each other. And then if we haven't, to get in contact and be like, hey, where are you at in the world? Right. And like, what can I do to bring you back in? Because these are people that we've cared about at some length. So again, when I say that sometimes it's not right now that you guys can be in each other's circumference and in each other's space, but later on down the line when everybody has fully realized their dream. How about the person that was just a whiz with finances and was an accountant and they would just wanted to be the best number cruncher, smasher, enumerator and all those things? What about when you get to a place where you're like, listen, this accounting has gone way beyond my, expectations and way beyond my, scope and realm. Let me reach out to that person and see like if they're looking to make a change. And hopefully at that point they are. I think if you guys really had good connection and synergy and you left it on a good note, those people will come back in and it will be wonderful. But you have to be open to that, and you have to be open to allowing other people to go in their space without, feeling any regret or any remorse or whatever it may be, but rather letting people go with the best well wishes and hopes for whatever their journey may be. And same for you from them. They release you to do your things without any, remorse, regret, or angst. But I think that's the thing that most people oversee or overlook, excuse me, because I've had many situations where when it was time to part ways, it was so uncomfortable for some people that they made it a very abrupt thing, and it felt like, "Oh, you're too good for me now," or, "Oh, now you're on your high horse." And so it really was what should have been met with awe and amazement and, just wanting the best for someone ended up being like this severed tie and this bridge that was burnt because people didn't know how to handle it. And the reality is that sometimes when relationships end, people feel like it's a loss. It's like, okay, they're no longer my friend, they're no longer my lover, and they're no longer, going to be with me in the same capacity. So it is a loss for me. And it really is not. It really is not. In order to move into a new space, you do have to let go of something to create space for it. And so, if you are operating with that understanding, you know that everything doesn't fit. Everything does not fit. And that has to be okay. It just has to be okay. And you wish the person well just as you would hope they wish you well. But I've been in many situations where that was the case. And even in those situations, I still wish, those previous people well. And I just settle my emotions and my feelings on the good times that we had. And I don't let that last moment or moments define a series of moments. Because I know it can be hard when, choice things are said and, in some ways, some things are done. Now, I know I addressed coming back at some point, and so I think this opens us up for, well, what happens when it is a burn down the bridge kind of situation and it is a things were said that we can't take back. What happens in those aspects? You let go and you let life happen. You let go and you let life happen. What I know is that at some point when you're not harboring any negative feelings about it, you may remember, whether it is in detail or whether it's vaguely. You may remember years down the road, but you'll be so busy, cultivating new experiences and hopefully having a life of abundance and joy and happiness that that will just be a blimp in time. And if that person is remorseful at some point, or if that person has grown out of that burn it down phase at some point, and of course for them, they've, vaguely, forgotten or vaguely remember whatever that looks like. Um, if life has its way, you guys may come back to each other. And there may be a point where they are very apologetic for it and they're very like hindsight is 2020 and I now understand why you had to be you and why I had to be me. And if you're still in the space that, you're fulfilled and happy, more often than not, you're like, if you didn't harm me or my family or, you really didn't do anything to my reputation, you just said a couple of bad things, you may just rest on the fact that you guys had more love than you had hardships. And you may be like, you know what, we're at a place we've both grown and we can move forward with each other. Or maybe you're just at a, or the other side of that is you're at a place where you're just like, nah, I'm not going backwards. Like, I appreciate it, and I still wish you well, but there's no bad blood. And you just kind of clean up kind of that the wreckage and the carnage from that fallout. And it's like, okay, no harm, no foul. Now we can both move on and nobody's wondering. It can be one of those situations. But the key in this is to make sure that you are owning your energy and owning what it is that you feel is important for your journey, and then allowing the rest to just be surrendered to God, the universe, um, or whatever it is that you find as your life source and your source of empowerment. For me, there are people in my life that or there were people in my life that I don't want to revisit at this particular point. And one of the things that people say to me is, "Well, Michael, would you be open to having a conversation?" And I'm like, I don't know that a conversation is needed, but I mean, if it presented itself, of course, I would be open to having a conversation. Now, does that mean reconciliation? No, it doesn't. At this point, I don't wish to reconcile with anybody that I'm no longer in relationship with. I am still on this journey of growing myself, and I'm on this journey of discovering myself, or really, I shouldn't say, well, it's I'm always discovering myself, but I would just say more of make sure that I'm doing some self-fulfilling things and some self-affirming things. And so where I'm in that space, I don't want to pour any energy into trying to fix or overwrite those situations at this particular point. Not mad, not angry, not resentful, but I just don't have the capacity for it. Every, open space and every entry point for me now is reserved for things that, again, go into that self fulfilling, self affirming bucket. And that could mean just meeting people who are ready to do that, right? I feel like I'm at this place in my life where if people come in, like, there are certain things that I need, right? I'm getting to the point where I need an assistant because there's so much stuff that happens that I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to do all of this at some point. And I know that very, very soon, I'm not going to be able to handle all of it, right? So I know that. I'm not great with graphics and I'm not great with all of these things. I know that I'm going to have to bring somebody in, and I'm not at a space where I can pay somebody six figures to do so. But I'm like, there's going to be somebody that is trying to build in that journey, and we're going to be able to come into it and learn and build together. And so that's what I mean. It's all in alignment with the things that I'm doing to affirm myself and to continue to cultivate that relationship, and cement that relationship with self. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Where I believe we go most of our lives, giving ourselves to people, whether it's the job, right? Itself, it's the people on the job, it's the marriage, it's the children, it's the family. We spend most of our lives, I believe, giving or being programmed to give ourselves to other people. And so in those moments where we have the self-actualization, we need to take it and we need to invest in that. And then it becomes a good synergetic situation at some point. If you are like, okay, let me feed me. And then once I, am fed and I am full, perhaps I can then go and feed other people. But there's some alignment there that has to happen, and it has to be aligned around what your priorities are. But again, even in that situation, like I say, I will hire an assistant, or an assistant will come on that is just very much so into my program, because that happens too. People invest in you with their time, and their gifts. And so, they're able to figure out themselves within that. I know that at some point that assistant is going to have to go on and do something else. And then I am going to have to pay an assistant and pay a graphic person more money. And so as I elevate, so will the talent around me and things like that. And could it be those people? Absolutely. They can come on and stuff like that. But when it is their time, again, you just settle on the fact that it is their time. I see often where people are successful and you're like they've had 3 or 4 assistants and that must mean something. Now, true enough, it could mean that they are bad people and that nobody gets along with them, but it can also mean that they came and were at their starting point and everybody got what they need and it was just time for them to move on. Like I would love nothing more than for somebody to be with me and learn a lot and get a lot of exposure, and then some multimillionaire comes along and says, "Listen, you've done wonderful for them. Like, would you want to come and work for me and get exposed and all of these things?" I would be more than happy to be like, you know what? This is an opportunity of a lifetime. You go do that because then there will be somebody else, right, at this level that I've made it to that will come in and say, "Hey, like I need this level of exposure and I need this entry point." And so again, it is really about coming into alignment with what it is that you need, and then also, it feeling or fulfilling what they need as well. And if you just are constantly in that mental space, and for me that heart space, it's always going to be okay when people move on and move forward. And if they come back, my God, if they come back, right? You just know that it is a divine alignment or divine realignment. And I'm very, very happy with that. So it's that old saying, you know, uh, if it's meant to be, it will be. And, if you love something, let it go. And if it comes back, that's how you know. And I don't think that just extends to romantic relationships. I think that is all relationships. Sometimes you let them go and you're like, okay. And if they come back, then you'll know it's meant to be. But that is truly my outlook on this situation. So it's the surrendering to the bigger picture and the larger idea. And also, something else that I tell people when it relates to feeling like I'm losing them, is that you don't have agency or ownership over another person. You just don't. And I think we get so comfortable having friends and again, family and every type of relationship that we can have. We get so used to having them around that we feel like they're ours and they belong to us. Something like our kids. Something like our kids are like, they're mine, as if they're like physical pieces of property, but they're not. They are living, breathing, thinking, acting. They are their own people. And although we get to enjoy them from time to time and enjoy time with them and all of that good stuff, they don't belong to us. They do not. They belong to themselves. And so I'm constantly making sure that I remind myself that anytime I occupy space with someone, no matter how long we occupy space together, they don't belong to me. They're not. And there is no modern or even, historical universal process that allows that, because unless you know of a situation where you can jump inside somebody's body and control it, or you can jump inside their mind and control it, you can never have agency and ownership completely over someone's body. I'm not talking about slavery, forcing people to do things against their will. I'm not talking about that. That's a completely different thing for a different series. But you don't own people, and you will never be able to make someone think and feel and be the way that you want them to. You can get the illusion of, you can get people to pretend, you can get people frightened into it or anxious, right? You can tie strings to your transactional relationship, but you can't have agency over people. It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't. And so I make sure I remind myself of that constantly so that I don't fall in the trap. But the beauty in that is I'm always rooting for people, no matter who they are. I've had some people in my life, and people are like, "Don't you hate them?" And I'm like, "No, I don't hate them. Like, we had a moment that didn't work out, but I mean, a gift is a gift, and I'm glad that that person is using their gift, and to be evil or conniving and hoping that somebody else is shipwrecks would be me wishing the same thing on me, right? The same energy that I'm putting out there is the energy that emanated from somewhere. So there's negativity there, and I don't want to be in that space. I'm not going to create negative energy so that I can give it to somebody else. I'm just going to put positive energy out there, positive for me, positive for them, and hopefully they're doing the best that they can possibly do. And so, there are people that have done things that most would be like, "Oh my god, that is terrible." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, it was." But at the end of the day, I hope that we are all out here operating in our gifts, and I hope that we all have the latitude to change. Now, that doesn't mean I have to allow them into my space. So I want to be very clear on that. It does not mean I have to allow them back into my space, but I can give way and surrender to the universe that they are exactly who they are meant to be, and they are doing exactly what they are meant to do. And so I know this episode has taken us kind of all over the place with that, right? I talked about my daughter a bit. I talked about certain friendships a little bit. I haven't talked much about family, as in, like your other immediate family members, like your mother, your brother, and your sister, and things like that. But those things apply as well. I mean, this is really a one size fits. There's a thing that I tell people that titles in families and things like that, so familial titles and things like that, don't really mean anything in the great scheme of the world, because people put these unrealistic expectations on what a mother is supposed to be, what a father is supposed to be, what a sister, brother, cousin. We put all of these stipulations and checklists on what they're supposed to be. And then when they aren't it, that in some way diminishes, in our minds, some of our minds, it diminishes who they are, or their capacity to love or be supportive or to be deemed good people. And that's just not okay. We are all people at the end of the day, and we are all able to make mistakes and be fallible. I'm not telling you that you can't be upset that your mother or your father didn't give you something that traditionally, right, they have given. I can't tell you not to feel that way. But what I can tell you is that harboring those feelings and allowing those feelings to dictate how you move throughout the world and to dictate your level of self accountability, ownership, and value within yourself, if you allow that to seep into it, you're doing yourself a disservice. I will contend that when you can just see people as people, when you can see people as people, it makes it more humane, and it takes away these unrealistic expectations, and it allows you to really get to know people for people. And I say this because every person's mother has a story. Every person's grandmother, grandfather, father has a story. And a lot of times when we put these glamorous family titles on people, we fail to see them for their story and their journey. But what we do instead is we'll go out into the world and we'll say, "Oh my God, I understand this person." This complete stranger will say, "I understand them. Oh my God, they had a tumultuous upbringing. And oh my God, they can't be blamed for what they didn't know." But we will not extend the same courtesy to our father, our mother, or whatever, because we have put this unrealistic expectation on them. So if I can give you something in that regard, I would say, if you are upset with your mom, if you're upset with your dad or your sister or your brother, I would say to remove the expectation that they were supposed to do something. They were supposed to give you something. They were supposed to be something. Remove that and ask yourself first, like, how have I just gotten to know them as people? How have I gotten to know them as people? And if you're really curious about that, right? And you're really curious and you really want to do the deep intellectual work, go and figure out who they are as people. And I bet you will find that you have more things in common about your journeys than not. And you will find yourself finding points of connection and intersectionality that you would have never otherwise seen, because you were placing them on some pedestal and unrealistic ritual expectation. So I would say if you are experiencing that right now, I would just say do that work. Do that work. And then find out from there what about your relationship with them, the one that you want to build as people, what about that is important to you? Is it important to have somebody that has walked in some of my same circumstances that I would have never guessed? Is it realizing that this person wanted to do something similar to what I wanted to do, and we just never talked about it because it was a dream deferred for them, and I didn't want to seem crazy for doing that dream? Whatever it may be, right? Figure out what you want that relationship to look like and what you want to get from it. And if you don't want the relationship and you find that as people you just don't work out, that's okay too. That's okay too, because then you've released yourself from this, constant wondering, well, what if, or will they ever show up the way that I want them? Will they ever check the checklist? So you've relieved yourself from that if you find that that person is just not able. So I appreciate you for the time today. This has been the Michael Experience Podcast, and I thank you so much for listening. And if you are looking for ways to support the podcast, visit themichaelexperience.com for all of our services and for merchandise. And also consider getting the Apple subscription podcast where you get exclusive behind the scenes conversations, mic drop moments, and bonus episodes. I thank you all again so much for listening, and I will see y'all on the next one. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.